Following the rejection at the cliffs of Nazareth, Jesus moves toward the Sea of Galilee. This is a gritty, secular, working waterfront, smelling of fish and salt water, where boat crews spend their mornings drying nets in the sun. First-century Galilee supported an organized, commercially significant fishing industry. It was a regulated trade that supplied local markets and fueled a regional business of salting and preserving fish for export. These operations required significant capital. Tradesmen like Simon Peter and the sons of Zebedee owned their own vessels, maintained expensive equipment, and managed a workforce of hired servants. On this specific morning, the crews are exhausted. Their night shift yielded nothing, and they are now fully focused on the unglamorous cleanup work, washing and repairing the heavy nets that represent their livelihood. Simon Peter is a practical businessman, grounded in these hard economic realities. His baseline is the physical world of labor and tax, making the paradigm shift that follows all the more jarring. As the crowd presses in to hear him, Jesus steps into Simon's boat and asks him to put out a little from the shore. The lake provides natural acoustics, allowing his voice to carry across the water to the listeners on the bank. When the teaching ends, Jesus gives Simon a command that defies professional common sense. He tells him to put out into deep water and lower his nets for a catch. Simon has fished this lake his entire life. He knows that fish come to the surface in the cool of the night. The deep water in the middle of a warm day is the worst possible time and place to cast a net. Simon points out that they have already worked all night and caught nothing, but he ultimately yields to the unusual instruction, telling Jesus, "Because you say so, I will let down the nets." This is a fragile, uncertain starting point. Simon obeys the command before he understands the purpose, acting on a willingness to trust the word of a carpenter over his own professional expertise. The nets drop, and an immediate surge of fish hits the mesh. The quantity is so large that the woven rope begins to strain and tear under the weight. Simon signals his partners James and John to bring the second boat. They haul the catch aboard until both vessels are filled so completely they begin to sink. Properly preserved and sold, a catch of this magnitude represents weeks or months of normal revenue, produced in a single moment. In a system where Roman fish brokers and government licenses extracted significant revenue from every haul, this impossible abundance provides these men with massive, sudden economic leverage. Jesus provides this unprecedented windfall before he makes any demand on Simon's life. He has given Simon more than he could have earned on his own. Simon is now standing in a boat full of unearned wealth, facing the person who provided it. He is forced to reconcile this generosity with the call that is about to follow. While the logical human response to a financial windfall is celebration, Simon's reaction is one of overwhelming fear. He falls at Jesus' knees among the fish and asks him to leave. He doesn't ask for another miracle. He tells Jesus, "I am a sinful man." Simon's title for Jesus changes in this moment. He began the morning calling him Master, a term of respect for a teacher, but now addresses him as Lord. The presence of holiness has created a searing awareness of the gap between the fisherman and whoever is standing in the boat with him. Simon doesn't feel validated by the miracle. He feels exposed by it. Jesus answers Simon's terror with a simple command to not be afraid, bridging the paralyzing distance Simon feels. And he then reframes Simon's entire identity. He takes the language of the fisherman's trade and tells him that from now on he will fish for people. In the first-century Jewish system, a disciple had to prove his credentials and seek out a rabbi. The student initiated the relationship. Jesus reverses this entirely. He goes to the waterfront to seek out tradesmen. The initiative comes from the teacher. This call isn't an invitation to master a curriculum. It is an invitation to proximity. To be a disciple of Jesus is to be in constant company with him, watching what he does and absorbing who he is. The crews pull their sinking boats ashore and walk away. They leave behind their equipment, their business, and the largest catch of their careers. The departure is total. James and John leave their father and their hired servants in the boat without a word of explanation, following Jesus immediately. For these men, following Jesus had become the only viable response to the holiness they encountered on the water. The scale of the miracle made the scale of the abandonment feel necessary. This morning on the waterfront established the core group of eyewitnesses whose testimony would eventually form the foundation of the Gospel accounts. With his inner circle formed, Jesus heads toward the Capernaum synagogue. His authority over nature is about to be tested against the spiritual realm.